Hannah, welcome to Shaping Your Pottery, and share with me what is one thing you love besides making sculptures?
So I would say because making sculptures and doing art is often like very solitary, and I'm quite like I love being around people and being with other people, so I get a bit lonely. So what I love to do is just go out and have good food, go to restaurants with all my friends and family. Like that's what I love to do, other than just making sculptures and just doing art. Yeah, mainly that.
Awesome, love it.
Sorry.
So we're going to talk about your sculptures today. We're also going to we're going to talk about your experiences with like design
Mhm.
and discovering your voice. So with that, can you tell me the story how you started making sculptures?
So I started making sculptures quite a long time ago when I was at uni. So I've always had an interest in art. I started doing paintings, and then everything that I painted ended up being on something that wasn't a canvas. And then I kind of realized that it was because I really craved this like sculptural experience. I like being able to walk around something and sort of see it from new perspectives. So I started like with I've used all sorts of materials. I started off using polystyrene, and I used to make these massive monsters that you could like sit on and sit in and climb around because I had the studio space at university. And then I progressed to ceramic just sort of on a whim because in lockdown my mum used ceramics, and so I kind of like learned a little bit from her, and she had a kiln that she built bought off eBay. So we fixed up the kiln, and that's kind of how I got into ceramics and carry on from there.
What would you say was the biggest challenge you faced getting into ceramic sculpture?
One of the biggest challenges I'd say was my own self doubt, probably, because I kind of expected just to be really good straight away, and I forgot that obviously things take time. So doing something every single so because it was in lockdown that I started, I just did it every single day, and there was times when I just honestly I was comparing myself online to other people, and I was like, why am I not good? Why can I not get to the place that I want to be? But it's just about taking your time and like changing the mindset from being always self-critical to appreciating little bits in the sculptures that you're making that you love, and then transferring them over to the a new sculpture, and eventually you start to like what you're doing.
How did you change your mindset from, oh, I'm not as good as other people to I'm growing?
I think that it's having my own social media page means that like I could see my own development quite clearly. From I would post sort of the bits that I was more proud of, and then you could see quite clearly how they do progress. Like if you scroll down to the bottom of my Instagram, there's work that I'm like, whoa, that's crazy that I've come from there to where I am now. And I think sort of trying not to compare yourself to other people is really big, and it's just comparing it to something that you've done before rather than someone, because you don't know how long people have spent making this thing, or you don't know what training they've had or anything like that. So trying really hard to not compare yourself to other people and just look at your own progress, and then little spotting little things. Every time you make something, something will be better than the last time.
I absolutely love it. So you are not only interested in ceramics and sculpture, you're also interested in design. So can you tell me the story when you entered for Nacho Carbonell? I hope I said that right.
Yeah, that is right. Yeah, so I worked for Nacho as part of my degree. We did like a placement year. So after my second year of university, we went for a year to do placements, and then you go back to university to finish. So for like 7 months, I worked with him, and it was complete sort of luck. I just applied for the placement, had a 10-minute interview, and then relocated to the Netherlands. And yeah, it was really great. It was like the first time I'd ever been in a big studio, the first time I'd ever really met a designer, and it really did inspire me to do what I'm doing now, because before I was doing a fine art degree, and I kind of hadn't realised that fine art can sort of transfer into other disciplines, and I realised that I really like design, and his work was kind of this combination of art and design, and that's kind of how I wanted to pursue what I'm doing. But yeah, it was just like every day we would make something that he designed. So he'd come down with a design, and sometimes those projects would take, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, but sometimes you'd do it in a day. And I just learned loads of different skills, and to not be afraid to just get stuck in, because sometimes they just didn't work at all, and we just have to say, okay, like call it quits and call time on it. And sometimes they worked really well, better than before, and then that would become his new most like favorite piece. So there's a lot of like learning how to accept the successes and how to accept the failures, and that really helped me in the future as well.
How did this experience help you with creating sculptures?
It helped me because like I think everyone there was in this sort of same mindset of being really creative and just it, trying to be experimental. I think before I tried so hard to be like perfect, everything has to be perfect, and I was like so self-critical. So there they kind of had this more like loose way of looking at things, and it was sort of like, okay, give that a go. Okay, that doesn't work. Let's try making it out of wire instead, or let's try making it out of concrete instead. Like there was so much trial and error to create something that was like really stunning in the end. But ultimately, you're never going to get it right the first time. Well, sometimes you do, but most of the time you won't. So it was accepting that things can take a long time, and that's really quite a helpful skill to have.
So, can you walk me through how you create one of your sculpture pieces?
Yeah, so everything that I start with starts with just a load of scribbling. My sketchbooks are an absolute chaotic mess. Like I've got drawings that cover drawings. Like basically, I start with a line drawing. So I just kind of go mad with a pen. If you can see my hand on the camera, I'm just literally going all over the place. But yes, it starts with kind of this blobby shape, and then I kind of look more into it and see how I could change that into something that's more it's more something else, So I can either put a light bulb on it, or I can put a lampshade on it, or maybe turn it into a monster. So you just use this blob and you put some teeth on it and some eyes. And I start generally the drawing process. I make like 20 to 50 drawings, then I just choose one and go for it. Everything I make is hand built, so I use like the coil technique where you roll out sausages and then just sort of smooth them all together. And sometimes it looks like the drawing, sometimes it doesn't. But the drawing's just an idea. It's just like a place to start off with, and then the sculpture ends up sort of growing in its own like organic kind of way, which I also quite like. Sort of everything changes, so it's good.
How does drawing it out beforehand help you like get it into your mind and get better, I guess?
It gives me an aim. So without the drawing, I wouldn't know what I'm doing. So the drawing is always 2D, whereas everything that I create is 3D. So it only helps to a certain extent, and but it does give me something to aim towards. And I think that that's. I know some people do it without any drawings, and they just sort of let the process take them. But for me, I think I'd end up making. I don't know where the stopping point would be if that was me. So I like to have something that I can kind of refer to, so that I don't go too out of hand. Something that I know kind of looks nice-ish, and then I can sort of play around a little bit. But I like to see where I'm going first. I guess that's why I do the drawing.
What do you determine as a nice sculpture, and like what is a bad sculpture for you?
This is really difficult because sometimes I'll have made something and I absolutely hate it, which happens quite often. I think every artist is the same. Like if you do a painting, often you're too self-critical. So it's difficult. So I make something like that I don't really like, and then someone will come walk past my studio, or my intern will be like, "Oh, that's really nice," and I'm like, "What? How do you see that that's really nice?" But so it is hard to know. But for me, a beautiful sculpture is something that has balance. I can always see when something is unbalanced, when one side is too busy or too looks too heavy. I like it when things sort of. I don't like things that slump as well. Often with clay, when you work too fast, it starts to slump and it looks kind of like it's falling in on itself. And even if it doesn't do it too much, I still really, really notice it. And it looks to me a little bit depressing when it does starts doing that. So I as soon as it starts doing that, I kind of don't like it. But I know that a lot of people quite like that look. But it is honestly, from having a business and hearing feedback, you realise that people love all sorts of things. So yeah, for me, I like it. I like things to be quite neat and to be not slumpy. Yeah, lumpy but not slumpy.
Lumpy but not slumpy. I love it. You are inspired by movement and nature, and can you explain this further?
Yeah, so when I was growing up, I used to always think that inanimate objects around the house had personalities. So I used to hate getting rid of my toothbrushes, and like if I had to throw anything away, I'd get really sad by it. And I think that comes from like being surrounded by nature because when I grew up, and I thought that everything would be alive. So I think that I liked this idea of bringing life back into the home. So everything that I make has kind of like legs, looks a little bit creature-like. Either like the lampshades are made out of alpaca silk or mohair, and I like having this idea that you've got this creature kind of crawling into your life, and the movement, I guess, comes from most of my work has sort of a direction, and I think that design often looks so permanent and so like set and strong and heavy, and I quite like the idea that my work is more, not temporary, but more. It does look like it is moving through your house because we move through our houses. Everything kind of changes and moves. So yeah, I like having creatures around me, I guess.
That was awesome. Love it. So, what advice would you give to someone looking to start making sculptures, but more importantly, like adding movement to their sculptures?
So I think a lot of it is to do with. So I think this is I think where my drawings come into play because the movement it's easier to create movement from a drawing because your hand is much freer. Whereas a sculpture is actually it's something that you have to work lots of hours on and concentrate really hard on. So sometimes you do lose that sort of ability to be free and like move freely because every single bit takes time. So you end up taking more consideration on it. So the drawing creates this sort of organic and flowing form, which then you can build on in the sculpture. For me personally, I think that curved lines, blobs and lumps and all that sort of thing, they create this sort of organic and free flowing kind of sculpture. So yeah, I think starting with sort of a fluid drawing and then working from that kind of makes it easier to create a more light kind of sculpture that you don't have to think as much about as you're making it.
Really great advice. So, what is something that you have said no to that has helped you with your process of making sculptures?
Okay, so when I first started making ceramics, I said yes to a lot of sort of commissions. So my friends and families, they'd pay me like £10 to make them plant pot. You know, kind of or online, someone would see what I'm doing and then be like, "Oh, you can use ceramics. Can you make me this or that?" And to begin with, it was really good because it gives you the skills to kind of like progress in what you actually want to do. But then there comes a time where you have to just say no because these things they don't help you with what you actually want to be making. So I was getting overwhelmed with making my friends the plant pots or mugs, and I wasn't having time to actually make what I wanted to be making. And I think there was this one day, and it just kind of clicked in my head, and some person on Instagram had messaged me saying, "Oh, can you make me a banana sculpture?" And I was just like, "No, I just really don't want to be making banana sculptures." So I just said, there was a point, and I just said, "Okay, no, I'm not doing anything that's not one of my own designs anymore. I'm not copying anyone else. I'm not doing anything like that. I just want to make what I want to make." And so although commissions are really good at the beginning just to get your skill level up, you do have to prioritize at some point and say no to anything that isn't making you happy with what you're making. So if something doesn't bring you joy when you're making it, stop making it. And yeah, just say no to stuff that you don't want to do.
For those that are listening, it's good to do commissions in the beginning, but if it's not bringing you joy or happiness, then say no to it. It's important to say no sometimes.
Yeah.
So something that I found interesting from your website was that you said, my aim for this year is to try and get my workout into as many places as possible. Can you tell me more about this statement and goal? I think I found it on your Instagram actually.
Yeah, so basically, I started this business obviously in lockdown, and so I didn't see or meet anyone, and everything was online. Every exhibition that I was part of was online, and it just really felt like I kind of missed out on this, the art world, if you want to say it like that. So this year, my because everything's opened up again, my aim is just to try and experience getting into an actual gallery, going and like being able to see my work in places, not just on a computer screen. And partly because of it's nice to have my work out there, but also just because I really want to build a community where like you get to know people and you can like network a little bit, if you want to say it like that. But yeah, so by what I meant by that is I want to start getting into exhibitions. I want to sort of see my work in shops and sort of actually see physical products around rather than just in my little studio and then online.
What have you been doing to reach out to people to get into galleries?
So I've been really fortunate, and a lot of people have actually messaged me first, and that's been my kind of lead. But the ones that I've contacted, they what I've done is, it's really important to keep your social media up to date because that's how people sort of see your work and your progression and that kind of thing. So it's kind of like a new portfolio now. Like you can just sort of drop people a message on Instagram and say, "Hey, I really like your gallery. Can I be part of it soon? Or have you got any shows where I might be able to take part?" And they'll just quickly like click on your name and then they see all your work. Like it's so important to keep your Instagram up to date. And other than that, having a portfolio, something that you can just sort of send across as soon as somebody messaged you. And I put so much pressure on myself having like a really really amazing portfolio. It has to be like really creative and eye catching and all this. But actually, all people want is to see clean photos of your work on a nice background and just really easy points. Like you don't need to put any words in, really, no faffing except the size, price maybe if you want. But yeah, just keep it simple, keep it easy, and then you'll be able to keep up to date with it. Because otherwise, if it's too complicated, you're never going to keep updating it. So that's my advice on portfolios and Instagram.
So you said you were putting too much pressure on yourself. Why were you putting too much pressure on yourself?
I guess like I think it's quite easy. So when you're starting a business, like it's easy to look too big. So like look at the massive picture and be like, oh, in I really want to be, selling all over the world and be as big as this person or that person or whatever. And you forget that it takes so much work and all like it takes actually loads of little steps to get to that place. And I think that I tried too much too like I think everyone tries too much too soon and then gets confused why it doesn't work. And I think that that's where the pressure comes from. So as soon as you take a step back and you just sort of take these little like make it into small steps. So it's like, okay, well today let's figure out how to post to America. Okay, today let's figure out how to do this and take it in these tiny little steps and then you do eventually get to the places that you want to go to. But I think when I first started, I was looking so big. I was like in 10 years I need to be here or here, and it's not the case. Like just go at your own pace and like try and stay calm.
For those that are listening, it's important to just start slow and just focus on your work and improving it and making it better. So, what advice would you give to someone looking to discover their own unique voice in pottery?
I would say, as much as social media is really helpful to promote yourself, it's not for me anyway. It's not helpful to sit and look at everybody else because as soon as you do that, you're stopping your own creative thoughts. So if you're sitting and scrolling through Instagram, yeah, it's fine to do it for a little bit of inspiration, but as soon as you're trying to recreate, all the stuff you see online, it does start to impact how your own style. Whereas if you just do your own drawings, you clear your own mind, and just do whatever comes naturally, that's going to be your style. Like might look really gross to begin with, or like really ugly, but eventually you will if you keep going, you'll find your style within that, and someone somewhere 100% will like it. It's crazy. Like there's so many people in the world. They People love all sorts of things. So your style will be liked, and it's just about like keep going, keep going, keep going, and eventually the style, your own inner like voice will come out, because everyone's got one, everyone's unique. So yeah, just keep going and try not to try and be someone else, because you don't need to be.
Wonderful advice. So as we're coming to a close here, what is one thing you want to hammer home with my audience today?
I think having fun is super important, and like I even forget to do it sometimes because you get so wrapped up in other things. But the reason I make monsters is because it's just so silly, and every time I make one, it makes me laugh, and you just got to have fun with what you're doing. So like you have to, every job, if you're making this into a business, like every job you'll have like ups and down days, and even if you're just doing it as a hobby, like the amount of times that I got halfway through a sculpture and then just smashed it back down because I'm not happy with it. Like it's important to accept that some days aren't going to be good, but just remind yourself that this is fun. Like this is what you want to be doing, and enjoy the process rather than getting bogged down on like the nitty details and that sort of thing. And just just play around, and you'll enjoy yourself eventually.
Absolutely wonderful. Hannah, I had a really great time chatting with you today. Where can my audience go and check out your work?
So I've got a website which is hannahsimpsonstudio.com, or my Instagram which is at Hannah Simpson Studio. So just find me on there, drop me a message, whatever you want to do. I'll try my best to get back to you. But yeah, I just hope you really enjoy what I'm doing, and hope to bring some happiness in the world.
Thanks for watching this video of Shaping Your Pottery. If you would like to learn how to start discovering your own unique voice with your pottery, I put together 15 questions that you can start answering and ask yourself to get you closer to start finding your own unique voice. Go to shapingyourpottery.com/questions to get these 15 questions to start truly making pottery that you love. I'll see you guys in the next video.